What did the pandemic ruin more than we realize?
I just made the move from a middle school setting to an elementary school one. The kids this year are okay. But the current 4th grade class, which I'll have in 2 years, can't read. They just can't. They don't understand phonics. They can't write words longer than 2 or 3 letters. The ones who can read don't retain anything. Over 60% of them qualify for ESS. The next closest group we have to that is 23%, and that was unheard of when that group, currently juniors, were coming up. People in 5th and 6th grades are seriously discussing early retirement because there's just not enough support for kids that low. We don't teach basic skills like reading and writing in our grade. Our district sure as heck won't hire people to help us. The lower grade levels have their own problems coming up. It's going to be a shit show. I was recently visited by a former student. She's a bright, ambitious girl who works her ass off and always has. She didn't crack 4 digits on the SAT. She did worse on the ACT, and she said that's the trend across the board. Visiting colleges have basically told the kids that they are trying to weight standardized test scores less than ever before to support these kids because they just can't get the scores that classes before them have been able to make. The county school in our district couldn't take a yearbook pick for the 1400 plus club on SAT. There literally weren't any kids who qualified. Not one. Heck. Some universities are doing test optional or test blind entrances. These aren't even like low-tier schools. We are talking Cornell and Princeton. They're doing it out of necessity. It started when kids couldn't actually get to a testing location or take the test at home during COVID. It's now extended because of so many reasons. The benefit here is kids who are talented and bright but not good test takers are not overlooked. But things are about to get a lot more weird, I think. Education in the USA was already a major problem. The system we've got now isn't sustainable. Not with the kind of kid we have now. COVID just made a glaring issue even more obvious. It'll be interesting to see what happens.
I've seen other people allude to it, but for a lot of us it was an absolutely horrible time to be in early stages of recovery. I was about 10 weeks removed from my latest medical detox, had been managing to stay sober, breaking my previous record of 11 or 12 days, and finally attending AA-style classes, eating better, going to the gym, fixing my social life and branching out into doing things that weren't just going to the bar after work every night and rinse and repeat. And then in my city St. Patrick's Day 2020, poof, everything non-essential has to close indefinitely at 5 p.m. All the resources I had finally learned to appreciate and use, all the effort I had put into adapting to a new, healthier and safer life, just vanished except for Zoom and Google Hangouts. Luckily, the liquor store was considered essential where I live for severe alcoholics like I had been that needed to drink every day to not have dangerous withdrawals, but as hard as I tried without having all the distractions. I am happy to report that after falling hard off the wagon for another 6 or so months I did finally find a program that had started accepting people again and am since closing in on a year of sobriety, but man, what awful timing. I am not using COVID as the sole excuse for relapse, but any reasonable person that's battled addiction would have to agree that the shutdown happening not far into a recently committed recovery made it substantially easier to fail.
I've had some serious health issues in my life, and those experiences were traumatic for many reasons but didn't really impact my day-to-day life after I had recovered from the worst of it. I didn't really think of myself as a vulnerable person, just a person with some residual health problems that I dealt with. I was pretty proud of my resilience, of how I didn't let those health issues get in the way and how I could hide them very well. Seeing family members, close friends, and trusted colleagues decide I was disposable in the face of inconvenience when COVID spread was absolutely more traumatic than nearly dying and having extended periods of incapacitating illness. Having people minimize COVID, turn up at my house when sick, repeated, "Oh, COVID only affects sickly people and that's just life. People die every day," etc. dramatically changed my life. I realized that a lot of people saw me as a less valuable person, who probably from a survival of the fittest perspective ought not to exist. They simultaneously judged my poor health, which was not caused by a bad lifestyle and couldn't be avoided, as somehow making me deserving of serious COVID effects, while also criticizing my mask wearing and not wanting to meet up with obviously sick people. I have to be very careful about who I physically see now, particularly since isolation requirements ended, and have more than once been lied to and put in situations they knew I wouldn't consent to because COVID's over, we all just need to move on. I don't think I can ever really trust people again. I feel completely alone in a way I never felt before.
I don't understand how the pandemic became a political issue, truly. But somehow it did, and my relationship with my parents, friends, and others I've known my entire life is now strained and broken because of how little empathy and consideration some of them had when the pandemic started. I should mention that my husband falls into a high-risk category, so having my parents act flippant about possibly spreading a disease that could kill him stung. But they still were extremely open about loving him, loving us, they miss us, we need to visit, etc. It's like they were normal loving parents, but when the topic of COVID comes up, a switch goes off and suddenly they go against every sentiment they've lived by. I really hate how divided we became, but more than that I hate how cynical and unforgiving I've become. I will never forgive people for turning this into a game, a joke, a political stance to fight about. So many people died that don't have to. And I will never forgive those that let themselves be brainwashed into thinking it was no big deal or a hoax. I also hope that if there is a hell, those in power who use their influence to spread lies and hate will rot in it forever. Human decency is dead.
My business for one thing. I worked so frigging hard for 25 years, and suddenly my customers are locked down. My business hemorrhaged cash. I didn't want to lose employees, they were my family. I finally let myself go as an employee. I ran out of cash to pay employees, and thank God for PPP, I was able to keep them all on payroll until we stabilized, and by then, the cash was all gone. But we were still in business, but my remaining employees kept it going. I sold to another company for 10 cents on the dollar and gave the money to my ex-employees. I am retired, hanging on. This is the true story of a small business owner and many other small business owners. I lost my shit. You appreciate business owners, we are on your side.
Colleges and universities before the pandemic were little bubbles of intellectual life. Students were sometimes excited by their classes. Professors invited other professors to give talks, and everyone came to the talks, including students and even members of the community. The semester had a real rhythm to it, where there was a palpable sense of excitement at the start. How will this semester's classes go? What will I learn? And an exhaustion, but an exhausted sense of accomplishment at the end. In the week before finals, the libraries were stuffed full. As I would wander in the stacks, I'd see faculty, grad students, undergrads all poring over books for their overdue articles/essays/papers. Call me silly, call me old-fashioned, but university life really was a life of the mind. Now that's all gone. Students just want to do the bare minimum and GTFO. And have no problems cheating on everything along the way. Grad students stagger around in shock like refugees. In the old days, the junior faculty were the life of the department, eager beavers who showed up for everything. Now I never see any of the new faculty at all, for anything. They don't even come to department meetings unless they can Zoom in. Too busy with their personal lives. Senior faculty are just staggering from class to class like half-checked out zombies. I went to a talk the other day and the audience was me. And a wall of screens, people zooming in, of people only half listening while they work on other projects. I've been a professor for decades, and while things had been changing slowly before, it's dramatic now. The university, one of the few places that really fostered genuine thought and reflection, rather than marketing pap and politics, seems a skeleton of its former self.
I lost my father-in-law suddenly in lockdown. I sacrificed my place for another family to attend his funeral. In lockdown, my mother had a stroke and I was unable to visit her in hospital to help her with her recovery. When she was discharged, she died months later in care earlier this year in February.
The pandemic absolutely destroyed everyone I knew. I lost a few people from the virus, sure, but the effect the pandemic had on us felt horrible. I found it insanely hard to communicate as I am naturally different online. I adopt a sort of cheerful personality, and I found it really hard to focus in class because of the fact that it was so easy to cheat in everything online during online school.
Thank you for watching. If you like to watch more of these videos, please leave a thumbs up, comment, subscribe, and don't forget to share to your friends and family. I'll see you in the next video.